Here's the deal, peeps. Today we're gonna learn how to squat. I'm giving myself 15 minutes. I literally set a timer. I'm not gonna overcomplicate it. I can talk about this stuff for 7 days straight. We're gonna talk about the 3 primary parts of the upper leg. The quads, front of the leg. Hamstrings, back of the leg. Glutes, the butt. Depending on the stance you are in, determines which part of your upper leg, which muscle group is going to work more. You're going to use every single bit of your lower body when you squat, no matter the stance, pretty much no matter the movement, unless you're sitting in a machine only doing quads. But depending on the stance, depending on where your feet are positioned, narrow or wide, determines how much quad, how much hamstring, how much glute is involved. Okay? Again, you're going to use all of them in every stance, every position. First, let's learn how to squat properly. Your objective when you are squatting. Your primary objective is obviously to move the weight down, move the weight up. You overcome the amount of load when you stand up. If your muscles are strong enough, you stand up. If not, you fall down. When you squat, you want to keep the weight. Look at the line that I'm going to draw from my heel, the line that goes from my heel up through my lower leg, through my knee, up through my upper leg, rib, shoulder, ear, straight up and down. This is my midline. I want to keep the weight as close to that midline as possible. When I'm here, the closer weight is to my midline this way, okay, on my coronal plane, the stronger I am. That's why wider position, wider push-ups are harder than closer push-ups. Front raises are easier than side raises. The closer the weight is to the midline, the safer, the more effective, the stronger we are. Same thing when we squat. What happens when people squat is they say their back hurts, the lower back, right? This is why. When people squat, they do this. Look at where the weight goes in relation to the midline, to my midline. You see the weight coming forward, right? Now, I am squatting. I'm bending my knees. My hips are going back a little bit, but I'm lowering the weight by lowering my upper body. What you want to do, you drive the elbows forward. Let's set it up. We're just going to go in a comfortable stance in between narrow and wide. So like a mid squat stance or comfortable. My toes are turned out to allow my knees to push out, okay? Once I do that, my abs are on. I'm pulling my elbows forward under the bar. This is a high bar squat. We won't talk about low bar right now. Squeeze the shoulder blades, chest is up, my abs are on. I want to keep my spinal column as straight as possible. So I don't want to be loosey-goosey in the middle. This protects my lower back. When I squat, I initiate the movement with my hips first. Hips first, not my knees. I'll show you why in a second. If I initiate the movement with my hips first, the first thing that happens is my hips go back and then my knees follow. I squat. Doing my best to keep the weight over my midline, and I stand up. If you do not have enough hip flexibility or mobility, you will not be able to squat very low with your chest up. Why? I'm only done 4.5 minutes. I'm doing amazing. Why? If my hips are inflexible and I try and squat, when I squat, look, my hips are going back and I'm stretching out my abdominals, my hip flexors. Okay, remember, my hip flexor connects the upper to the lower. As I squat, they're pulling. If there's not enough pull, if there's not enough give in my hip flexors, as I squat, it will pull my upper body down with me, right? And I'll stop here. My lower back will hurt. I will stop squatting. The massive benefit or underestimated or hidden benefit of squatting is actually improving your hip flexibility, hip mobility. So when I squat, I want to work on keeping my chest up and standing. Try this. Try this. I won't move the camera. Actually, no, yes I am. Come on, you're coming with me. You're coming with me because I want to show you this. This is an excellent drill to do. This is what I want you to do. Stand in front of a wall. I hope you can see me all the way. If not, I don't care. My head might be cut off, but you get the point. You're going to stand as close to the wall as possible. Your feet will need to be pretty wide to start. You put your hands behind your head and you're going to squat in front of the wall. And you will feel two things. One, your hips. Two, your upper back. This is an excellent drill to teach you what muscles you need to work in order to stay upright when you squat. Look, now this has a little lip here, so I'm kind of cheating because I'm getting like about 1.5 inches, 2 inches of help here. So I'm gonna put my toes right up against this. I'm gonna put my hands behind my head and I'm gonna squat. Hips first. Watch what happens. I'm gonna do hip first and then I'm gonna do knee bend first. Watch what happens. Knee bend first. Look, I'm gonna start the squat with my knees. Look, my knees have touched the wall and I can't squat. I can try, but I'm falling backwards. So my knees hit the wall. Watch when I use my hips first. Here, hips back, and then squat. Knees are not touching the wall. I'm opening my chest. I'm using my upper back. Requires a little bit of upper back mobility, upper back strength. My abs are on. Again, adjust the stance if you need to. The wider the stance, the easier. Why? Because the less my knees have to bend. We're going to talk about stances later on. Squatting, squatting, squatting. Standing up. To make it more difficult, I bring my feet in closer. The closer my feet, the harder, because the more my knees have to bend. Ooh, ooh. Ah. You get it? Try that in front of a wall. Do that every day and see how you feel. And move this back a little bit more. There we go. I use the mat just so I can place myself. Try that. It'll help you understand the importance of your hip flexors and having flexibility and mobility in the hips and strengthen the upper back. So when you squat, hips back, then down. Just practice that. Hips back, then down. The next thing when you're squatting, you only squat as low as you can without your chest dropping. This is not getting you anywhere. This is not getting you anywhere. Okay? Keep your chest up. Boom, stand. If that means when you squat, when you start, you can only squat here, that is fine. Because this is going to be better for you in the long run than this. I promise you. You learn it correctly to start, and then you move on. So what will happen? You'll have a little dip. We call this the valley of disappointment. When you first start learning something, how you want it to actually be is this linear trajectory. I think actually it should be this way on the camera. What it should actually be, or what actually happens, is you're pretty bad at the beginning, and then you improve towards the end. I think I might put a graphic up to kind of show you. So you might be squatting now, you might be squatting like this, so you can squat 20 kilos or 60 kilos or 100 pounds, whatever it is. And you're like, oh yeah, I'm killing it, but my back hurts and I don't feel like I'm getting any stronger. Take a step back, take off 20, 30 kilos, take off 30, 40, 50 pounds. And yes, you'll feel like, oh, I'm getting weaker, but you're not, because now you're learning the pattern correctly. We understand hips back first, chest up, weight over the midline. Your feet. Feet, comfortable position, toes turn slightly outward. Why do we turn the toes out? Because when you squat, you need to be able to push the knees out to give the hips room to fall down. Imagine your hips, so you have your pelvis and you have your femurs that fit into them, right? The acetabulum, acetabula. When you externally rotate your femurs like this, it creates space for your hips to drop straight down. If I don't do that, it's fine, but watch the difference. Look at my hips when I turn out. You see that little sag? I'm here. I'm trying to push myself down as far as I can. We're not going to overcomplicate it. Just remember, being able to externally rotate your hips opens the door. Externally rotate your femurs, unlocks the door for the hips to drop. That's what you want. Your heels, always on the floor. When your heels are on the floor, it reminds you to activate hamstrings and glutes. When I'm on my toes, it's primarily quads. You see tons of people in the gym squatting in running shoes. squatting in shoes with a mushy sole. And so the foot's sliding around, you can't get the heel steady. And when they squat, their quads burn out and they just can't do anymore. Take your shoes off and watch how much stronger you feel. So if you're gonna squat, get a nice flat shoe. These Adidas drop set 3s are amazing. I'm sponsored by Adidas. Okay, but they're good because the heel is flat and it's a sturdy shoe. Excellent for squatting, excellent for deadlifting. Ideally, you want something that's flat, not very much heel. I'm trying to think if I want to get into lifting shoes and ankle mobility. Look, not really, because we're not going to be squatting that low. Don't worry about that. That's another video. I'll do another video on that. Squatting, bottom up, heels down, toes out. That's your foot. Your knee should track in line with your foot. If you squat and your knees do this, go look at yourself in the mirror or videotape yourself. If you squat and that happens, this lateral knee movement, okay? It starts with a V. This lateral knee movement, I can't remember what it's called, but this lateral knee movement means that your hips may not be strong enough to keep your knees pulled out. Muscles here, muscles here. Hip abductors, move the leg out. Hip adductors, move the leg in. So think about adding to the middle. Adductors, abductors out. Stand up, put your hand on the outside of your thigh and do this. And at the bottom, feel these muscles turn on. So these muscles are part of the same group that does this with your knees. So when you are squatting, you always want to be pushing the knees out. If you have pain in your knees when you squat, it may be a few reasons. Tightness throughout the hips, pulling on the outside of the knee, weakness in the hips. It may be that actually when you're squatting, you're in the toes. And if you're in the toes bearing weight, you put a lot of tension on the anterior part of the knee, on the ligament that comes across here. Okay, it's a lot of tension there. Now, there's nothing wrong with knees over the toes. I'm not talking about that in this video. That would be another video. Only got 3 minutes left, okay? So when I'm squatting, hips back and down, knees out, toes turned out. Hips initiate the movement. Hips back, down. Got it? The difference in the stances. In a closer stance, when I squat, look at this. You see how much my knees are bent? When I stand up, my quads are gonna do most of the work to pop me up. Not all, most of the work. I'm always using my butt, always using my hamstrings. But on the way down, my hamstrings are working. Okay, cool. As I stand up, it's gonna be primarily my quads because my knees are bending so much. And remember what I said, the quads extend the leg, hamstrings flex. Quads extend the knee, hamstrings flex the knee. So when I am here, it's gonna be a mid stance. I'm gonna feel this in the front of my legs, the majority in the front of my legs. As my feet move out, my knees bend less and less, right? Does that make sense? Look, close stance, wide stance. I can't go as low. My knees are stopping at about 90 degrees. That means that even though there is gonna be quad working, there's gonna be a little less quad. And because my feet are so wide, my hips have to escape back a little bit more. The further back my hips are, the weight moves back slightly. I'm driving through my heels rather than the middle of my foot and the ball of my foot. And so I'm using the glutes to stand up. So my glutes and hamstrings are gonna be working a little bit more when I'm in a wider stance. Look at this. Let me show you an example. Let me show you what I mean. Get into a lunge. Bring your foot as close as you can. Your back foot as close as you can. I want you to lunge down. And look how much this knee bends. Right now, you see where my knee is? Pay attention to where the weight is in your foot. It's towards the front of your foot, right? Stand up. Quad. Do that again. Stand up. Quad. My knee's bending a lot. I'm pushing out the ball of my foot. My quad is working. Now do this. Take this foot back as far as you can. Move it out the way. As far as you can. And now lunge. Weight in the heel. Stand up. Butt. You're still working the quad, but not as much, right? hamstring, booty cheek, quad. Play around with that. That's an excellent example of what the difference is between these squats and these squats. And you can play around with the squats on your own. Play around with close stance, squatting, feel the quads. Play around with wider stance, glutes, hamstrings. That's it. That's it. I'm not going to belabor it. This is how to squat part 1. Let's call it that. How to squat part 1. Takeaways. Keeping the chest up. Keeping the weight over the midline. Only squatting as low as you can, keeping the chest up. Initiate the squat with the hips. Hips back, down, up. When you stand up, think about the hips on the way down, hips going back. On the way up, hips pushing forward. So I'm pushing the ground down, and I'm pushing my hips forward, and I'm pushing my knees out. Knees out, pushing the ground away, pushing my hips forward. That will remind you to use your glutes, to use your hamstrings. Abs on, elbows under. Elbows under, that helps encourage me to lift my chest. Hips back, down, up, forward. Squeeze, back, down, up, forward. Stop squatting with squishy shoes. Keep your chest up. Hips back and down. Practice squats without any weight. Play around with your stances. Get in front of a wall. Practice them on the wall. All these things will help contribute to you improving your squat technique. It will improve the strength of your legs. Your legs will change. They will become stronger. They will become leaner. Whatever you want, you will build more muscle. Whatever you want to do, squats will do it for you when we do them correctly without injury to our knees or our lower back. Squats are one of the best things you can do for your body if you do them correctly. Squats, part 1, done. Till next time.